Hey y'all, Killer Orange Cat here. I hope everyone is keeping safe in these challenging times. I resisted wearing a mask for a while because it made me feel uncomfortable. But then my sister designed a Killer Orange Cat mask that I actually really love. I normally don't push for merchandise sales, but for every mask we sell, we'll make a donation to a charity that is trying to help feed hungry children. Stay safe and wear a mask, even if it's not mine. Number 1. The Wait. I'm not one of those people who actually like thunderstorms. I know some people do, but that's just not my thing. I hate things being wet, and I personally hate being wet myself. Then with the thunder making noise, and it sucks driving on the wet road, with rain pouring down and messing up your visibility. All in all, it's just a huge pain in the butt. So anyway, after that opening, it probably won't come as a surprise to anyone that this story takes place during a thunderstorm. I was in my early 20s at the time. I was an assistant manager of a bookstore at the time. The exact chain of stores does not exist anymore. I guess this is off topic, but the decline of the brick-and-mortar bookstore has always been very sad to me. This was on a Sunday. I always remember that because it was the day that I was closing, and I closed every Sunday. It was generally my favorite day, because I was the only manager there for the entire evening. It had gotten dark rather early in the day, almost an hour or two after I arrived at the store, and the clouds that had moved in were really nasty looking. I recall one of my cashiers wanting to go outside and check the clouds out. I of course let him do that. The upcoming storm likely had an effect on the business, as we were getting very slow, so there wasn't enough business to really care. The weather turned out to be really strange though. The clouds appeared to be moving quite fast, but they never broke up or ended. But even weirder was the fact that it seemed like these clouds were bearing down on us. But it didn't start raining. We were getting some thunder and some lightning. Not a whole lot, but some. But for the most part, it was just dark clouds, continuing to move across the sky. When it was closing time, it still hadn't started raining. I began to think that maybe, if I could get things done in the store in time, I would be able to get on the road and get home before the rain began to fall. I was excited about the idea. So even though it was against the policy of the store, when the store closed, I let the entire staff leave. I knew that I would be able to finish up my paperwork and such much faster if I was there alone. Being in the store alone at night was always pretty spooky to begin with. It was much more so this time, though. I had to turn the lights off in the main part of the store because that was part of the rules. So it was dark, but when the lightning bolts flashed, they lit up the inside of the store in white light. Back in the office, the thunder cracks were coming much more often. I hurried to get my work done so I could get out of there. I got lucky. By the time I was finished, and I had locked up the store, it still had not started raining. If I remember correctly, it took me about 40 minutes to make the drive. So I kept my fingers crossed, hoping that I would be able to do it. About halfway through the ride, though, the rain finally decided to come down. And it came down hard. If you've ever been in a car and seen the rain begin falling ahead of you before above you, then you will know what I experienced. It was exactly that. I anticipated the moment that it hit my car, and it hit my car hard. The second half of the drive was unbearable. The rain didn't let up. My windshield wipers were going crazy, but my visibility was still poor. I had to drive really slowly. When I made it to my apartment complex, it was still raining really hard. If I went out in the rain, I would be drenched in seconds. My parking space was in a spot that I could see my apartment, but it was still across the lot. So I would get completely soaked if I had gotten out, and I wanted to avoid that. So I decided to wait in the car for the rain to let up. I know this might seem weird to everyone. It would make sense for me to be able to just dry off and change once I got into my apartment, but I wasn't willing to do that. That's really how much I hate getting wet. So I waited. It wasn't cold, so I just turned the car off and waited in the car. I may have been waiting in the car for about 20 minutes when some movement caught my eye up by the apartment building. I almost didn't believe what I was seeing and had to do a double take in order to make sure. My apartment door opened up. 2 men exited my apartment. Well, they were barely men. They looked like teenagers. They were carrying some things with them. Things they were taking from my apartment. I was too shocked to really do anything at first. I wondered if I should try and confront them, but realized that would be dangerous. But I did take out my cell phone and I called the police. It was odd, telling them that I was sitting in my car, in the rain, watching 2 people rob my home. That was exactly what was happening. They told me to definitely continue waiting in the car. The police arrived quickly. Although I'd seen the robbers go away from the area my apartment was in, it wasn't hard for the police to find them and capture them. Once they did, the officers came to talk to me about what had happened. They walked me over to my apartment. The officers told me that I was pretty lucky that I waited in the car. When they searched the 2 guys, they found them carrying several knives. They were suspected in other robberies and a knife attack on a senior citizen in the area. All I could do was wonder. I mean, really, my fear of getting wet might have saved me from an attack. I was in that car for at least 20 minutes, waiting for the rain to slow down. If I had gone in before then, I would have walked in at the middle of the robbery. And who knows what might have happened if I did that. Number 2. Shortcut. Back when I was in college, I had this little cafe that I enjoyed studying in. I can still picture it perfectly in my mind. It was a bookstore cafe, but it wasn't a big place like a Borders or Barnes & Noble. It was a privately owned store and it was very cozy. And that was what I liked most about it. Inside the cafe, there was a table at the front of the store that I liked a whole lot. It sat right by the front window of the store. So I could do my work there and watch the people as they went by outside of the store. I recall the day that this story happened. I was sitting at the table doing some homework on my laptop computer. It wasn't very busy that day, and that was exactly how I liked it. I had a latte, and I was working on an essay. I nearly jumped out of my chair, surprised by a loud shock of thunder. I'd been so deeply involved in my work that I hadn't even noticed that it was getting dark outside. Taking a look out the window, I noticed that the wind was blowing quite hard. The sky was covered with these green and black clouds that always seemed to come along with a bad storm. I didn't mind the storm. Storms are normally pretty short. I was originally thinking that maybe I would wait it out. I could go home after it was over. But when I went online and I checked the weather, it looked like it was going to storm all night. So I decided maybe I should try and get back to the dorm before it began pouring. Packing my things up, I got set to go. When I went outside, I realized how strong the wind actually was. I could not tell you how fast it was going, but the wind kept trying to knock me over. I was also anticipating that pressure drop you usually feel right before the rain begins to come down. I was hoping that I would be able to make it back to my dorm. The thunder and lightning were now hitting over and over again, almost making a constant wave of light and noise in the sky. I had never seen a storm as bad as that one before. I assumed the rain was going to be brutal too. So on the way home, I decided that I was going to cut through an alley rather than walk to the end of the street and take a turn. That was a big mistake. As I went down the alley, it wasn't long until I came face to face with the scariest thing I had ever seen in my life. There was an alligator standing at the far end of the alley, and it looked like it was looking right at me. I didn't know a lot about alligators. I live in Florida, so I guess this sort of thing has been known to happen. And the problem was that I didn't know what to do. I knew they were fast and dangerous, and I know that it was aware that I was there. We stood, eyes locked together for quite a while. My mind was racing, wondering how to handle this situation. I broke out of my eye trance, and a loud boom of thunder deafened me. I did the only thing I could think of to do. I turned and I ran, and I pretended that the alligator was not there and it was not following me. But with every step, I felt like I would feel it grabbing my foot and pulling me back. At the end of the alley was a Chinese takeout restaurant, and I ran in as quickly as I could and closed the door behind me. The lady at the store was startled and began to ask what was wrong, but then she stopped. The alligator had indeed followed me, and it was right outside the door to the restaurant. I had never heard a scream before like I heard from that lady that day. She pushed past me and locked the door. She was frantic and was yelling stuff in Chinese that I did not understand. But a man behind the counter quickly made a phone call. It began storming before the people arrived to get the alligator. It had moved on at that point too. It was down the street, but I could still see it. And they were able to catch it, and I guess no one was harmed. You never think about these things until they happen. But alligators can be pretty scary, and I'm just lucky that I was able to get away from that one. Number 3, the ride. I walk around a lot. It's not that I have to. I actually have a car, but I don't care to use it too much. I prefer walking somewhere. I get good exercise, and it usually is a good experience. Because of my tendency to walk, though, I got myself into a scary situation once. I'll tell you what happened. I needed to head to the local grocery store. My pets were low on food, and I knew that I would have to get them something so they would be able to make it through the day. The grocery store was a good 40-minute walk. It was actually warm, and the sky was completely clear when I set out. In fact, the entire time that I was walking to the store, it was nice outside. When I got to the store, I purchased a few items and put them in my backpack that I always carry with me. Now remember, when I went into the store, it was clear and sunny. I only bought a few things. When I left the store, I was shocked at the quick change. My clear and sunny day was gone, and in its place was a blanket of black clouds. I hadn't bothered to check the weather before leaving the house. It was so bright and sunny outside that I didn't think that I needed to. But now, it almost looked like it could begin storming at any moment. Well, I started walking out of the parking lot, and I tried walking fast. Well, even walking fast, it would take me at least 30 minutes to get back to my house. I couldn't run just because I didn't have good shoes for that. I just tried to hurry as much as I could. I actually did a really good job. I made it through the majority of the area, but then I saw it. And it was unlike anything I had ever seen before. I hope I can explain it well. I saw a big mass of water that almost looked like a cloud. It was coming straight at me, and there was no way that I would be able to get out of it. The rain hit me and almost knocked me down. And it wasn't just rain. It picked up what I suspected were small rocks. Or maybe it was hail. I have no idea. But the point is that I got soaked quicker than I could ever have possibly imagined. I mean, I was absolutely drenched. And then what I considered to be the weirdest thing happened. A truck pulled over, and the man in the truck asked me if I wanted a ride. I told him that I was soaked and wet, and would just get his car all wet. He insisted, however, and eventually I gave in and got in the truck. Now, rather than take me home, the guy just kept the truck where it was, and then began talking to me. He told me that he'd seen me many times, walking up and down the main street, and he wondered if I had a car. I told him that I did, and just explained how I think walking is better to do. He really seemed to think that my preference was weird. Finally, he took off driving, but rather than turning into my neighborhood, he pulled into a truck stop. My first thought was that he needed gas or to buy something, but he parked far back in the parking lot. You know, you could take your clothes off, and then you wouldn't be so wet, he said to me, and then put his hand on my knee. No, I responded. I'll change and shower when we get home. Is there a reason we parked here? Well, like I said, I've seen you walking around a whole lot. I guess that I have always wanted an excuse to pick you up. I was feeling very, very uncomfortable. I thought that his act had been that of a good Samaritan, but it wasn't. I felt around for the door handle, but I realized it wasn't there. I couldn't open the door and get away. Yeah, I got rid of that a long time ago, he informed me. He pushed himself closer to me, and it was very scary. This guy was going to force himself on me, and I had no way of getting away. But there was a way, actually. I did the only thing I could think of. I pulled my right fist back, and I punched him in the crotch as hard as I could. He screamed in agony, and that was my chance. It was disgusting to do, but I crawled over the guy. He kept trying to grab me, but I was able to crawl over him, open up his door, and get out. Out of the truck, I almost tripped on the wet pavement, but even though I didn't have good running shoes, I managed to run to the truck stop before he was able to get me. I told the cashier to call the police. Well, the guy drove off before the police got there, but they were able to pick him up later, due to the description I gave them. Turns out the guy had been in jail several times for doing what he tried to do to me. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough to convict him just based on what I testified to. But I did get a restraining order on him. Well, for a while afterwards, it was difficult to walk out in the street. Every time a car passed out of the corner of my eye, I saw that truck and got afraid. It was a long time before I was able to overcome that. But eventually, I came to deal with it on better terms. Hey y'all, Killer Orange Cat here. I wanted to let everyone know that I'll be doing a live stream this Saturday at 8 p.m. Central Time. I will have 2 new original stories that I'll be reading live, but other than that, I'll just be chatting with everybody. If you like this video, please let me know by clicking the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please feel free to hit the subscribe button and the bell below, or wait for the icon of our friend Ichigo the Cat that will appear at the end of this closing. Leave me a comment, Let me know what you thought of the video, and consider sharing it with someone you think might enjoy it. If you have an original story you would like narrated on Killer Orange Cat, please send it to the address included in the description. But most importantly, don't forget to make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.